Hi, 6th grade. We are starting a little unit on the Middle Ages. That's obviously a short unit because we only have school this week and next week, and then we're done for the summer. I wanted to focus on some things that I thought would be more interesting to you during the Middle Ages, and then when you, as you get older, go to junior high and high school, you'll learn more about the Middle Ages. And so we are going to look at feudalism first, which is probably when you think of the Middle Ages and medieval times, the things that we talk about in this section are the things that most people connect with that time period. Knights and, jousting tournaments and those kinds of things that people think of with the Middle Ages. So, I'm going to be reading to you about feudalism, and then when I'm done, you have a crossword puzzle to fill out. Let me see where that is. Okay, I don't know where my copy of that is, but you have a crossword puzzle, and the clues in a crossword puzzle come from all of the vocabulary words on the pages. So when you get done, I would go back through the video and pause it on the pages. So like right now, you could pause it, and you would have a whole picture of this page, and then you could use the information. So you'll want to do that to go through your crossword puzzle. You'll also find there are some clues that have to do with people that you know, maybe people in our class that will fill in. So there are just some extra words to make it a little bit bigger of a puzzle. All right, so all the vocabulary words, remember, are at the bottom of each page. All right, so feudalism. The people of Europe no longer had a strong central government after Charlemagne's kingdom divided. They passed into a period of feudalism. Under this system, wealthy landowners promised protection in exchange for service. People in Europe were in constant danger of attacks from invaders such as the Vikings, the Muslims, and the Asiatic nomads. Under this system of feudalism, kings granted estates called fiefs to nobles who had performed a service to the king. These nobles were known as lords. A lord would then choose nobles who did not own land to manage portions of the fief. These nobles were called vassals. In a special ceremony, the vassal knelt before the lord and took an oath of faithfulness, promising loyal service to the lord. Being asked to become a vassal was considered a great honor. In exchange for the vassal's service, the lord gave the vassal a piece of land. Although the fief still belonged to the lord, the vassal could use that piece of land freely. A vassal could also divide up the land and become a lord over lesser vassals. Divisions of land and loyalties often continued until the fief was the size of an average manor. Important to the protection of life and property during the Middle Ages was the knight. He wore metal armor from head to foot, and his horse was also heavily armored. He wielded a sword, a lance, and sometimes a battle axe. He carried a heavy shield to protect himself in battle. If we think about the armor of God that we're supposed to put on and all those pieces. Nearly any nobleman could become a knight if he proved himself worthy. He had to be faithful and skilled in warfare. A boy pursuing knighthood could take the first step at the age of 7 by becoming a page. As a page, a boy went to live in the home of another noble to learn horsemanship and fighting skills. He also did chores for the lord and the lady of the castle. Around age 14, a page became a squire, a servant to the knight. His responsibilities then would include helping his master dress, accompanying him on hunts or in battles, and caring for his master's horse. A squire continued his lessons in archery, swordsmanship, and lance fighting. When a squire turned 21, he could become a knight. Sometimes a squire was knighted instantly on the battlefield in recognition of unusual bravery, but most squires received knighthood in a special religious ceremony. The squire spent the entire night praying in the church. The next morning other knights solemnly dressed him in his armor. The knight knelt before his lord, who touched him on the shoulder with a sword and declared him a knight. During this time, the church was the Catholic Church, which is, kind of under the big umbrella of Christianity. We happen to be Protestants, like at our school. It's a Protestant school, which was divided away from the Catholics when Martin Luther led the Reformation. But that's what they're talking about here. So all of the government and all of that stuff was tied into the church during this time. So that's different than we have it today. Knights of the Middle Ages promised to live by a strict code of behavior called chivalry. This code taught a knight to be generous, loyal to his lord, skillful and brave in battle, faithful to the Roman Catholic Church, protective of the weak and defenseless, and courteous to women. Sometimes new knights went immediately into battle. When there were no battles going on, groups of knights might participate in tournaments. Jousting was one contest where pairs of rival knights met to compete. The goal of the joust was for one knight to knock the other off his horse with a blunt lance. So this would be a good spot to pause if you're going back to work on your crossword puzzle. And it has a couple of the words there that are in your puzzle. Notice the big dogs. There's a big dog down here, a hunting dog. His shield, and it has designs and shapes and things on it. Your assignment tomorrow is doing I think it's tomorrow, is doing a coat of arms, which is like what's on his shield. Oh, it talks about it on this page. Hold on. While a knight was fighting, the best way to identify him was by his coat of arms. The coat of arms was the emblem painted on his shield. Each knight had a different coat of arms. So that's his. And so down here it talks about some of those other things. Colors on there and what they mean. And different things about shapes and things like that. So you have in your packet for tomorrow, you have this paper where you can put your coat of arms. And so I have it divided up so you can do separate things in each section. And there are instructions and there are meanings of things to go in there. It talks about heraldry. Okay, disadvantages of feudalism. Although feudalism provided order and protection in a time of upheaval and weak national leadership, it had some distinct disadvantages. First, it lacked the unity of a strong central government and military. This disunity could be felt in practical ways, like frequent conflicts between rival lords and their armies. Second, the feudal lords had almost total control over the residents of their manors. In many legal matters, for instance, the lord's decision was final. It could not be appealed to a higher authority. Finally, peasants, the vast majority of people living under the feudal system, had very little freedom and opportunity, although their basic needs might be met. So not necessarily like slaves. They worked and earned what they got, but they were probably, a lot of them, only barely scraped by. And so that's most of the people are just barely scraping by, just barely surviving. Okay, this picture here. I love pictures from the Middle Ages. I love their clothes and all the jobs that they did. Okay, life on the manor. The manor was the center of daily life during the Middle Ages. The manor system allowed wealthy nobles to defend their lands and the people living on them. In the early Middle Ages, a lord who owned a manor lived in the manor house, usually a large house made of logs. From about the 9th century on, because the 9th century is the 800s, okay, 800s, lords lived in castles. The lord's home was built to offer a place of protection during attacks. The manor was self-sufficient. It had woods, fishing ponds, and fields for growing grain. Each manor usually had its own priest and skilled workers. Peasants produced their own food and made their own clothing. They grew crops and raised livestock. The manor had a village where the peasants lived. Every manor also had a church. Most people did not have to work on Sundays. People were also released from work on some of the special holy days celebrated by the church. The word holiday comes from this medieval term. I remember that. I think I have that in the crossword puzzle. Most of the peasants living on a manor were serfs. They farmed the Lord's land, cleared fields, built and repaired buildings, dug ditches, and fixed roads. The serfs did not have many possessions. They used the Lord's mill to grind their grain into flour. They baked their bread in the Lord's oven. Often the Lord charged them a fee for use of these items. The homes of the serfs were small. Some were only about 15 feet long and 6 feet wide. So for a lot of you, that might be like half the size of your bedroom, or it might be a little bit bigger than your bathroom, half the size of your living room, half the size of your parents' bedroom. So that's about how big their home was. Entire families, 8 slept and lived in the same room. Most serfs shared their homes with their sheep, cows, or pigs. I will tell you, having had sheep and pigs, that would be stinky and messy. The animals usually stayed in a separate area, partitioned off from the living area. Serfs were bound to the manor all their lives. They could leave only with the Lord's permission. Some peasants on manors were more privileged. They were freemen, skilled craftsmen, such as blacksmiths and carpenters. They paid less rent and worked fewer hours for the Lord. They were allowed to move from the manor if they wanted to. Okay. So feudalism arose during the Middle Ages because, remember, those other leaders lost their rule. Here. They no longer had a strong central government after Charlemagne's kingdom divided. And so that's why they passed into this time period where there wasn't like this central government where decisions were made. It's each king, each noble had their land, and the lords, had their manors that they took care of and that they were kind of in charge of. So, there were kings during this time period, but they had less power in that way because a lord could make a decision for people in his manor without the king stepping in. So, put this last page up again. So remember to pause when you're going back through, and you can use the definitions and vocabulary words on the pages to help you with your crossword puzzle. Okay? A good thing, and if you want to, you could watch, like Robin Hood or Sword in the Stone. I think you can find them on Disney Plus right now. I haven't looked recently, but that might be somewhere where you could find them if you don't have them, or if you don't know somebody that has them. They might have them at the library too, and I think you can do reservations at the public library. So The Sword in the Stone and Robin Hood are both Disney cartoons that talk about this time period and things that were kind of legendary during this time period, and you'll see a lot of the things that we studied about here in both of those movies. All right. Have a great day. I will see you next time. Bye.